Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Bold Inventor Show. I'm JD, and that's Matt, and we're going to do it
Hi.
again today. Let's do it.
Fantastic. How you been, JD? What's new?
I'm good. Well, we're kind of transitioning from summer to fall. Sports, soccer is ended, and we're starting basketball. I'm going to be coaching some basketball.
Nice.
My two little girls.
You're a pretty tall guy. You got some height on your side of the family, right?
With some good shoes. I'm 6'1". I'm 6 feet even. So yeah, not too bad. I did play basketball. I gave up sophomore year. C team basketball was a struggle. But yeah, I know more about soccer than basketball than soccer.
Okay, right on.
Yeah. Well, we got a good show for y'all today. We're talking patents, trademarks, and intellectual property today. This show is for you, the business owner, entrepreneur, inventor. And as you see by the title, we have special guests waiting backstage from Mu Mycology. I'm going to mispronounce it all day long, but mycology movement within mushrooms. And they've got an innovative mushroom growing technology we're going to talk to them about. And I'm excited to bring them on. So hang tight for about 10 to 15 minutes. We'll do some Q&A first and then get to them for maybe a half hour or more if we get to. Matt, and then we've got a Bold Bite. Shark Tank episode. I did find one mushroom related, so we'll have them on to help us critique, look at it from an IP perspective as well. So Matt, so you are, let's see, what do you guys got going for Halloween? Anything big for the holiday?
I think we're gonna go to my sister-in-law's place in Minneapolis and do some trick-or-treating with her kids.
That sounds good.
That's the plan. But we're the Sesame Street family. That's I'm let's see, I'm Elmo. We got Kermit the Frog. I guess that works. But Cookie Monster, and who's the other one? The trash guy. What's his name?
Oh, Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch.
Of course. And who are you going as?
I'm Elmo.
Elmo. That's nice.
I do a pretty incredible Elmo impression.
I'm not going to tickle you, but look, you're going to have to do it now.
All right, here we go. Got to put my game face on. Ready? Here we go. It's me, Elmo. Elmo's a silly monster. That's pretty good.
Oh
right?
My gosh,
that's pretty good. So
super good, Matt.
Yeah, that's my. So I'm just waiting for the guy who does the voice for Elmo to die, so I can take his job.
Yep. Well, he's got a kind of a legacy. and so you assume that it's a male. I would have thought female, but either way, you can kind of pull it off.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Good job there. We're doing. I'm kind of a Grinch of Halloween. Honestly, I'm not a big fan, but I'm getting kind of arm wrestled into embracing it.
Yep.
I hate the amount of candy. I'm on the pulpit about sugar. It's just, oh gosh, I just hate that.
It's hard to have it in the house.
Oh, so bad. It's so bad for kids. Anyway, I don't want to go on for too long. My kids and family have heard enough about it, but man, not a fan of that. Not a fan of just scaring kids. So anyway, I'm more of a happy, smiley, let's give kids like something healthy to eat. Grinch. Nobody's gonna like.
I love it.
So anyway, let's get to. We've got a bunch of questions that came in. Alva's got 4. But I want to take care of our folks over in Reddit. They had a couple of good questions. And I should mention, if you're listening live, LinkedIn, YouTube, and I think we're on Facebook today, fire away with your questions. Know that we are not giving away legal advice, and you're not a client necessarily at all by joining this broadcast. We're not giving any of that information out. So no confidential invention disclosures here. Just keep things hypothetical, process level related. We are going to be able to share all the information we have and knowledge about the law. That's what today's about. So first question for you, Matt, is on the trademark side. And I think this one should be pretty straightforward. We'll kind of get you warmed up. So what happens if someone registers an existing trademark in another country for a different entity in the same class?
You want me to answer this in the Elmo voice? Just kidding. All right. So what happens if someone registers an existing trademark? So like here in the United States, and they register it in a different country, but it's a different company.
Well, different entity, yeah. So all right, you got Bob Soda or Bob Soda in the U.S. Okay, whatever class that would be under beverages. I want to go and I got an entity in the U.S. that owns it. Now I have a different entity in the U.K. I want to go register Bob's, but I want to sell it as non-beverage. I don't know. It's a weird question.
Or like you have two different companies. It's kind of a confusing question. You can have, I mean, different countries. What I have here in the United States doesn't apply to you in England, right? From a trademark perspective, trademarks are based on country and the specific use of the product or service in that country. So if someone else registers your trademark in a different country, you're kind of out of luck. Now,
I see. I understand the question. So I live in the UK and someone else has Bob's already.
Yep.
Okay. I'm in the UK and I want to have, I want to register Bob's in the UK. Well, yeah. Can I do that?
If someone else already registered it? No.
In the US?
Oh, yeah, then you could.
You could.
I'm confused.
Bob's, let's start over. This is great. Bob's sold in the US. Okay.
Yep.
Exists. Existing trademark. Now,
yep.
I'm in the UK. I want to launch Bob's with my own company and using that name in the UK. Can I do that?
You can. You can.
There you go. I think that's what they're asking.
You can. Now, of course, like if you're planning on opening a McDonald's, you got to make sure that no one's already registered that in the UK, right, or anything similar to that. And there's other statutory provisions that would prevent someone from registering or using a name like McDonald's, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that you can't. I mean, it's put it this way: we have lots of clients where we do, our common law unregistered use search, and we find other companies with the same brand, similar products or services in other parts of the world. And we still register and use the trademarks here in the United States.
We'll take it one step further. What's something that Bob's could have done to prevent this other registrant here in the UK from?
Yeah, they could have used the Madrid Protocol to file abroad. So take their application from the United States, take it abroad. There's some cool rights that you get when you do that. You get like priority use dates back in the United States, even though you're abroad. Going back to your initial application date. So there's a lot of good statutory reasons why you would want to file, abroad from the United States. One of the more interesting ones is like, say in the United States, if you file here in the United States and then you find out someone had filed a similar trademark in the UK, maybe a couple months after you filed in the United States, you can still take your application from the United States within 6 months and have priority of use dates in front of that person who applied in England 3 months after you.
Ooh, that's cool.
For you, right? In the UK. So there's some strategy there, but that's a pretty rare thing to find.
Yeah. No, awesome. Thank you for taking that extra step.
Sorry for the confusion.
Oh, good. Well, you're all warmed up now. Let's see if I can do any better on the patent side. So is it possible to patent an invention or an idea that is similar to one that's already been patented? What's the legal process for doing so? And is it possible to patent? The answer is yes, it is. And there's a couple things you want to do. It's good if you know that your invention is basically an improvement of, or sort of the next version of an existing patented product. Or a patent attorney can help you do a really thorough patent search of what's available publicly. That's probably the best place to start. You've got a brand new type of opener for a water bottle, and you think this is so much better. You can do it underwater. It's not going to open. It's childproof. Whatever it is, that new cap. But it really is specific to that one type of bottle that's already been patented. You can get a patent on it, even though you could not actually legally sell the whole bottle with the new cap without getting a permission from the previous patent holder. So you got to kind of understand your market potential might be limited because your idea is similar, or you're not going to be able to sell your product without the base of the patent that's already out there. Now you can go and approach them once you've gotten your patent rights and say, like, I'd like to license this to you. I think this is a great improvement. This is a big market opportunity. And you could then make a royalty deal off of every single product that's sold using your new improvement or idea. But again, it's really going to come down to, is that similar differential, between what's already been done and what your invention is it big enough really to warrant the investment of time and money, hiring counsel, waiting that time and building up a business? Is there much sort of is the ROI looking good or not? Is what I would look at. So
Cool.
that helps answer that question.
Love it. Crushed it out of the park.
Let's do. Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, we're going to Avo. This one is a question about a DBA.
Okay.
We'll do 2 more. I know we got our guests waiting backstage. All right. When filing a trademark app, am I allowed to list my DBA as the owner? Are there drawbacks or risks to this? I own a different brand and I don't want to be associated with the new one that I'm creating. Therefore, I do want to list my LLC as the owner of this new trademark because then they'll be linked publicly. I also don't want to create another LLC yet for this new business. So can I simply file a DBA for the name of the new brand and then use that name to be listed as the trademark owner? Also, if I file the DBA with the new brand name, will this be public information that my LLC is operating with multiple DBAs? So the DBA question.
Yeah. No, you can't. You can't. You can file and list your DBA, you're doing business as, your assumed name, your pseudonym for your business as part of the application. But you still need to list the actual legal entity. Your DBA is not actually a legal entity. It's a stand-in for the name of the business. And so the USPTO is going to require you to list your LLC, or you as an individual owner, or if you have a corporation, the corporation, or your 501c3 nonprofit. So yeah, you'll need to list the LLC. Of course, you could also just file a new LLC and use that name. That would probably be the most appropriate way to do it.
Got it.
I don't think you're going to get around this issue. I think you're going to have to file a new LLC.
And even then, I mean, if someone who's really looking, right, if they figure out the name of the LLC, they can probably go find out from the Secretary of State, the registered agent,
Yep.
perhaps. There are ways to remain anonymous.
And then there's anonymous states too, where you can file anonymous LLCs and corporations. Delaware, Wyoming, Arizona, I think. There's a number of them.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Let's see. This one is a patent question, but it's really a trademark question. We'll wrap up with this one because it's a common one. This one comes out of our Quora. I like this one because these questions are sort of the ones that they think about, but they're afraid to ask.
Yeah.
How can I patent 2 businesses that are already in existence if I'm using them as one? Let's unwrap this one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question wrapped in an enigma, surrounded by how can I patent 2 businesses that are already in existence if I'm using them as one? So I think they're asking, like, how can I register 2 business trademarks if they're using them as one? I think I don't really know.
Yeah, so like basically you started doing, JD's Magic Mo. Yeah. Years later, you did JD's Roofing.
Yeah, you can have multiple trademarks owned by the same legal entity, whether it's you or your company can own multiple different trademarks, because you might have one operating company that does multiple things, right? You might have one part of your company might do trademarks and then might do patents. You might want to keep them separate.
Yep.
In which case you might file for 2 different trademark applications with one owner, but listing multiple different services.
Love it.
Yeah.
Short and sweet, Matt.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, we don't have any live questions. I see we have the viewers out there. If you do get a chance, if you haven't subscribed, please click that button. That'll let you know about all of our videos that come out. And if you're watching this after the fact, you can join us live. We're here Wednesdays, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. And we'll be here for roughly an hour every week talking intellectual property, patents, and trademarks. If you're watching live, this is your chance to ask a question, something that's been on your mind. Find a way to ask it. We'll put you to the top of the list here. But without further ado, Matt, I'm going to bring on our guests. We've got 3 guests.
Love it.
Edward, Natalie, and Nicholas from Mu Mycology. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. And so we're going to be talking hopefully about your company and about your technology. Maybe, Natalie, could you kick us off with sort of what is Mu Mycology?
So Mu Mycology is a company where we have a new technology for growing mushrooms. The traditional method of growing mushrooms has been used for a very long time, and so we've kind of developed a new way of doing it. Mu came from the Greek letter for mu, which means micro, because we are really looking at mushroom growth on that kind of micro molecular level.
All right, who's got the cat?
That's my cat. Her name's
First, it was a
Kiwi.
baby. I'm going to newborn. No, that's a cat.
There is a very emotionally needy cat somewhere in someone's house.
Yes.
Proceed on. This is yes. Continue. No, go ahead.
No, that was great. That I think Natalie kind of sums it up. The place that we really want to be is in that micro stage. Everything that we're looking at is relevant to kind of a confined space growth. It's not really intended to supplant anybody that's growing mushrooms on a giant farm where you have resources to burn, right? I mean, we know that mushrooms can recycle plant matter really well. We're really looking into what happens if you have an incredibly small footprint and you actually want to create mushroom as a food stock.
Got it. Very cool. What is it that you have come up with? What is the innovation? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So let's be upfront, and I think Edward, Natalie, and I will say this pretty openly. We did not think this didn't exist. So like from the beginning, we're like, yeah, this is pretty cool. We can definitely do something here, and we'll use it. We did not think that it was novel enough that it would be patent worthy. But the truth is, we started looking around, and nobody had anything like it. So that's where we got in touch with you, and like it kind of changed how we were thinking about it, and it was actually much more novel than we had anticipated.
And let me jump in to kind of go over what the sort of problem is. If you are producing mushrooms in the traditional sense, what you end up doing is you have a substrate, and you grow the mushrooms on that substrate. It chows down the food within that substrate, and then after you harvest the mushrooms, you throw it all away. And so it is sort of labor intensive of bringing up the substrate, inoculating it to have this one sort of harvest event. Our technology really improves on that because you have a small footprint where you have an established colony that you don't chuck out, and you keep it healthy, alive, and continuously producing mushrooms. And that's where the micro, the mu, comes in, is you can have a very small footprint, but continuously actually produce and harvest those mushrooms.
Super
to give you
cool.
kind of an overview of the system, it's basically hydroponics, but for mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The trick was hydroponics. Really, you're feeding plants, and the nutrients that plants need they really need water, which is easily supplied with a hydroponic system, and then they need sunlight to fix CO2 that's in the air. It's awesome. You don't have to do much. Mushrooms are a little different. They are much more animal-like than plant-like, so they need to eat something. In most cases, you can feed them anything. Mushrooms will grow in living trees and dead trees, on beans, on anything, which is kind of why they're fascinating. But the application that we saw that kind of made the connection for us was this idea that if you think about mushrooms as just part of this fungal category, yeast is also part of that. So yeast would be small single cell organisms that kind of do the same, and we feed them all the time to make beer. So you use liquid, the liquid has sugars in it, you use malt and all of that, and now you get to a nutrient-rich liquid solution that the yeast then converts into ethanol and byproducts, and then we drink it. It's beer. So the concept was actually pretty simple if you think about it that way. It's like, what if you replace the traditional hydroponic system that is water with something that is extremely nutrient rich, like that wort that you make to make beer?
Got it. So, and I don't know hydroponics too well, but is it just water? There's no dirt in hydroponics at all?
There are, like, hydroponics also span a really broad spectrum of things. So if you do simplest version of it, it's water, and then you allow something to live roots in the water, and then nitrogen fixing bacteria. So you need there's some organisms in there that are needed, and then for the most part, it's fixing CO2 from the air. So in its simplest case, that's true. It turns out you need a little bit of additional nutrients and so on to keep everything alive. But when it comes to your energy source, the energy is always in plants coming from light and then fixing oxygen, CO2 to make materials, right? So that's really where that energy is coming from. In the case of something like a mushroom, your energy store is actually everything that the plant's already fixed. So it's sugar.
Just my back to the Halloween concept. Okay, this is pretty cool. So it's so the way mushrooms were grown, or sort of are still being grown. You mentioned a substrate. What's a typical substrate, like you said, that is being thrown away and wasted now?
So that can be a ton of different things. As Nick said, anything that it's getting a carbon source from. So the traditional would be something like, soybeans, straw, mixture of more and less nutritious carbon sources. If you go out in the woods and look at dead trees, there's mushrooms growing all over them, right? So it's breaking down that sort of material, lignin and other things, and making simple sugars out of it. So the big issue here with throwing away these sort of carbon sources is not that the substrate is valuable, more of that it is wasteful. And so if you look at producing mushrooms, what you end up doing is converting the biomass of roughly, I'm going to say 10% of your substrate source into mushroom, and then you throw away roughly 90%. Wow. And so, let's say you're in, a urban environment. You're not composting. You're not on a farm. Suddenly, you are trying to produce mushrooms because local food, restaurant, from farm to table is a great idea. But if you're throwing away 90% of the biomass, you're still producing a ton of waste. And that's the goal of this sort of quote unquote hydroponic, approach. Is if you have a healthy colony that's continuously producing, you're feeding it, you're keeping it alive, you're not turning over that biomass.
So I'll just try to keep it plain. Is it true that you've invented a method to have hydroponically grown mushrooms?
So we would try to stay clear from the idea of just hydroponically, because hydroponics kind of infers that it's just water, and that's not at all it. We really have to focus on the fact that you are supplying it with nutrients in a liquid form.
So there's a new category needed. There's a new name for it.
Yeah, I would say we have come up with a way to keep a healthy colony producing.
Continuous mushroom colony production.
So there's one more feature that makes it kind of interesting, and I think that was an add-on, and that is the way that mushrooms work is they are extremely guided, or the signaling pathways have a lot to do with the environment that they're exposed to. So you imagine you see like when you're walking around in your neighborhood or so on, you walk past the place one day and there's nothing, and the next day you walk past and there's all of these mushroom fruiting bodies that popped up, right? It's really fast. It turns out the mushroom colony was there the entire time. It's underground, it's nice and big, it's nice and healthy, and it's doing what it does. And only when the mushroom kind of breaches the dirt and gets exposed to a little bit of oxygen-rich air does it quickly make fruiting bodies we traditionally call mushrooms.
Oh.
What that means is
this is good.
Yeah, mushrooms are fascinating. Gosh.
Yeah, you can actually control when it fruits by controlling the atmosphere that it's in. So like part of the invention was, okay, so we're going to be really good about feeding the mushroom basically IV fluids, right? We're going to give it all the sugar and the micronutrients that it needs, and we're just going to give it to it, and it doesn't have to digest or decompose plant matter to get it. And then the second step is you actually control the atmosphere that they're in. For 2 weeks, you leave the atmosphere relatively oxygen-free, so like high CO2 levels. And what happens, the mushroom colony just expands. It's in this state where it thinks it's underground. It just makes more cells, and it just gets thicker, and it just grows a little bit more.
Time out there. So colony, I'm still picturing traditional mushroom shape. No mushrooms are actually growing. No fruiting is happening.
Correct.
So let me give you a let me
Go-
give you a sort of real world example that was part of the motivation for this. In the Oregon's Malheur National Forest, there is a single mushroom organism. So this is a genetically distinct individual. This is not a colony. This is one individual organism. It is expanded over about 3.5 square miles, and it's estimated to be greater than 1,000 years old. So mushrooms are not short-lived. There's no reason we can't keep a persistent colony. It is all about keeping it healthy and happy. And like Nick said, it's really these environmental factors that it's all underground. It's all this one massive sort of individual. But then with the right conditions, it's going to say, it's the right time to reproduce. That's the actual mushroom that you think of, and that's what we eat. Think of it more of the apple of an entire tree. The entire tree is underground. You just pluck that apple when it pops above ground.
Thank you. This is so good. Hopefully, I have enough time to keep going. Okay, keep going. So tell me more about the little tweak you had to make.
Yeah. So the advantage here is now we have another lever to control, and that's the atmosphere that we're in. Along the way, we learned a lot about how to have a sterile environment, how to keep it clean, how to make the mushroom healthy. It is a living organism, so it has an immune system. So once it's healthy, it doesn't get bacterial infections or things like that. Strangely, in some of our first attempts, we really had to fight off the fruit flies, but you learn.
Yeah.
But now you have this lever to pull, which is the environment. The nice thing about that is you can program it and you can control it. The big benefit here is you can essentially have mushrooms on demand. You can say, I'm going to let the colony grow for 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to switch it over from a CO2-rich environment to an oxygen-rich environment, and that will trigger the mushrooms to generate fruiting bodies, so the mushroom bits that we normally think of. And you can have that happen for a day or two, and then cut it off, take it, switch back to the growth condition where it's just under CO2 again, wait 2 weeks and just recycle and continue the process again and again.
Wow. Very good. Let's talk about sort of I'm not a huge mushroom eater. I'll cut some mushrooms up, put it in like a spaghetti mix, but I'm not ready to exchange it for the proteins. Does it have the same, amount of protein? Can you have, if you're a protein eater?
Conveniently, Natalie is an MD, so we're going to have her answer this one.
Okay.
So mushrooms are relatively high in protein. It's not the same as eating a steak, right? But they are relatively high in protein. And in fact, a lot of vegetarian options use mushrooms, especially like portobellos, as a meat substitute. They're also high in a lot of micronutrients, especially B vitamins. So when we were part of the NASA's Deep Space Food Challenge, that was one of the aspects that we kind of brought up a lot, is the fact that it does have relatively high protein. It does have these micronutrients that would be important, for an astronaut living in space to also be able to consume without needing to have a cow.
Yeah. And is there any sort of degradation, if you will, of the nutrient quality as this thing is built in this artificial chamber, right, as opposed to a natural mushroom?
That would be a really interesting question. I think you'd have to do a lot to actually get to that point, for us to actually tell.
Yeah.
I will say this. We've eaten the mushrooms we grow, and they're delicious. They don't taste any different from a mushroom that we've bought at a store.
Cool.
So we
No
can't
different
know
from
if
a
the
mushroom
micronutrient.
Grown in poop.
Yeah, it's just a little cleaner.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. Right.
My family's from Pennsylvania, and where my family's from, they grow a ton of mushrooms out there, and you definitely know when you're passing a mushroom farm.
Yep, yeah, strangely, those decomposition products aren't part of this because we feed it kind of the base nutrients. You're not feeding it things that it actively has to decompose to a significant extent. So there's a lot of pathways that we don't think actually get activated, and you actually just get growth of the mushroom. So it's sort of like eating simple sugars as opposed to very complex carbohydrates. That being said, because we're in a liquid medium for the nutrients, we also have the ability to really dose the chemistry that is required. There's an example of only recently have they been able to grow morels, and I believe the trick had to do with growing the morels in the presence of grasses. And you actually had to grow these because there were chemical signals from the grasses that were involved in actually getting the morels to grow. And if they weren't together, they didn't grow.
Oh,
So
really?
And this is one, and sorry to cut you off, Nick, that I was out in the woods a couple weeks ago foraging for chanterelles. Absolutely delicious, but it's similar to morels in that it is a hard to cultivate species. And the difference here is everything you're going to go, or a lot of the things you go to the store and buy, are those mushrooms that decompose something. Those are very easy to cultivate because you throw food, it will decompose it and create mushrooms. Now, there are a whole pile of different species that are symbiotic. These are the mycorrhizal species. So, yeah, we are talking morels, chanterelles, boletes, porcinis, truffles, a lot of these, high dollar item species because they're not easy to cultivate. And the nice thing about our system is it actually mimics ectomycorrhizal sort of system. The system we have is almost like a tree root that the colony interacts with. We give it the nutrients, it can get rid of wastes. And so we think that with future direction here is that we can work on getting a lot of these hard to cultivate species actually growing, have a functional colony producing.
Fantastic. Okay, I want to try to talk, bring us back to patenting here a bit. Obviously, this is sort of an ongoing area of exploration and research, but patenting is about making money, at least in some sense. So I'd love to hear about a business plan. Where do you plan to go now? You've got the patent issued. Congratulations, by the way. And you've got international filings, I think, still pending. What is the plan? How are you going to get this in consumers' hands?
Well, we have a couple of different directions that we're looking to go. So one direction is, like we said, these kind of small footprint restaurants, even something like a gas station in a food desert, ways to bring these, small footprint devices into, like, directly into consumers. Another option is to go, the more large scale agricultural route, because our system is modular, but it's also very scalable. And so for businesses that don't want a whole lot of waste, that is another option. And then the kind of third option is to go the more academic route and working with, universities. Like I've reached out to Oregon State University here. They do a lot with mushrooms. And so, like, kind of going the research route and helping universities that work very closely with mushrooms, that don't want a whole lot of waste, that want this, very narrow system that they can control. It's a controlled environment. And so it works well in that kind of academic setting.
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat all three of Natalie's points again. And again, just to continue on this, we do think there's an application here where you simply look at the mushrooms that you grow and you grow it on a schedule and you grow it on purpose, and the footprint's really tiny. And that is one where you say, put a unit into somebody's restaurant, and all of a sudden they have the ability to say, I'm going to make dishes that are not season dependent because I know when I'm going to get these mushrooms, and that's how we're going to operate. And we think we can figure that one out relatively simply. It comes at a cost. So I don't know if people will necessarily do it in their homes.
Yeah.
But for a restaurant, it may make a lot more sense. Also, I don't know if you want to eat chanterelles every 2 weeks, and at some point you might get tired.
I think my family would. It feels to me like a lot like the craft beer industry 20 years ago, right? You had a lot of like home brewers with DIY kits. And, quite frankly, that's who I've worked with in the past on trademarks, has been kind of the DIYers, right? People who are coming up with their own ecosystems for growing mycology.
And now you're talking about an area that I think the three of us are really excited about, and that is if we can show somebody how to do this. Yeah, of course we would like to see if we can turn that into money for ourselves, and that's really cool. But showing people how to do it, the mushroom as kind of a class of things that we either eat or get value out of, it's not like it's really old, but it's not one that humans are particularly good at like harnessing. We know how to do animals, we know how to do plants. The mushroom one is just a little bit difficult. To Natalie's third point, there are thousands, like hundreds of thousands of species of mushrooms. And the problem is that every single one can have a little niche and they can make molecules that are just very difficult for us to understand. And many of them are medicinal. We're going to go into things that have specific anti-cancer properties. And like there's an entire world out there. And then you can get into things that are psychoactive, like all of the magic mushrooms. They make molecules that are interesting. So there's an entire category of, if we haven't even grown the vast majority of mushrooms and cultivated them, we just don't know what's out there and what we can actually do. And I think showing people that you can do this can actually expand how we think about mushrooms. I'm not saying it's a magic bullet for anything, but I do think it's part of a solution where you say, actually, we probably need to cultivate some of these because they'll actually complete some of the food imbalances that we may have.
That's really interesting, Nicholas. I mean, it's almost like you have these rare species, right, of like animals, birds, or whatever, right? And we put a lot of time, money, and investment into like preserving them, right, from extinction. But at the end of the day, from what I'm hearing from you, there's a lot of mushroom strains out there that we've never even seen, right? Because we haven't cultivated them yet, but they're there, right? But
we've only cultivated, so like as Edward said, there's an entire class of mushroom that only grows on living trees, and they actually use the vasculature of the tree as basically the system we are inventing, where you say it feeds the mushroom sugars and liquids and so on. Those aren't cultivatable in our current form factors. We rely on the things that only decompose, and that's only a category of fungi.
And mycology is a relatively new field. That people haven't studied mycology in depth for a while. And in fact, the recent rise in mycology and the kind of mushroom heyday that we're having now has mostly been driven by citizen scientists. It's really only now that, the more academic medicinal companies are kind of getting more on board.
Yeah, got it. Well, something you've got to go many different angles. It's hard to say, hey, we want to do this one mode of commercialization because you really don't know what else you could be doing. Very exciting for sure.
From the last category is that kind of commercialization of a mushroom that people haven't cultivated but potentially should. And the thing that we think there is interesting is actually to partner with a company that wants to identify a mushroom that they really think has the value and help them actually bring the fruiting body to market by actually helping the cultivation half. In essence, we turned a plant decomposer dirt environment into a plumbing environment. And because it's plumbing, now we can have a conversation with somebody that says, actually, your facility looks a little bit different. It's a flow plumbing problem. And we deal with it in that fashion. And that's, I think, where we can help.
Love it. Wow. Okay. So we're going to have you guys back on with an update for sure. What is your, let's say, by end of next year, where do you hope to be?
Oh, I'll leave that one to
2025. It's sort of near term. What are some developments you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm super proud we were able to do this?
Well, so I to give you a bit of background, we started this in our garage. We developed the prototype in our garage with very minimal funding. We did the Deep Space Food Challenge, and that gave us, and we were finalists in that, and so that gave us a little bit more funding, which was how we were able to do the patent. But really, our next step is to kind of find some venture capital or partner with an existing corporation to try and move this technology forward. So I noticed someone asked a question about licensing versus
yes.
sales, device
Right.
sales support service. Right now, we're moving more towards the licensing model, mostly because of this is a scientific operation, right? And having scientific equipment requires a lot of investment. So right now we're looking more into that kind of licensing aspect so that we can partner with companies that have that sort of equipment in order to take this to the next step.
Yeah, everyone romanticizes the garage invention, but as a chemist, as a scientist, garage science is terrible. I'm just going to say that outright. It is very difficult to do things right, and so that partnership with lab space, with other scientists, being able to explore some of these future directions we've talked about, is pretty critical.
I mean, you mentioned that you asked about the nutritional content of the mushrooms. We can't know that until we partner with a lab that can look at that more in depth.
So for the Deep Space Food Challenge, we had to harvest our mushrooms and then send it out to a lab to make sure that it didn't have any infective bacteria or anything like that on it. And then they had to combust it in order to check for nutrition. And so there's just a lot to it.
Absolutely. Jonathan Mitchell is asking, how much is it for someone new? Like you said, in a restaurant, ballpark, what would that installment cost? For that pizza maker or something, right? Whatever restaurant.
If we give you a ballpark right now, it's very wrong.
I don't want to buy one. What? Anyway,
I think you're in the couple, multiple thousands up to $10,000 in order to really do it right.
Okay.
The issue comes with keeping everything sterile. It turns out that you have to actually keep everything clean. Now, the nice thing about what we're showing is we're actually using a lot of the technologies that, for example, came through COVID. COVID was really interesting in the sense that all of a sudden you had this explosion of people that tried to make sure that the air was not full of organisms. So either viruses or pathogens of any sort.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was we reached out to one of the companies, and I'm happy to share this. The company was called Pure Cleanse, and they made a specific type of air purifier that uses light in order to generate hydroxide radicals. Now, normally these would be bad and it would destroy things, but in the case of trying to destroy living things out of the air, it works great. So we called them up one day and we're like, hey, we have this idea, we think this will work. And essentially they were like, yeah, you should definitely try it because their system works better if there's more water vapor around. So if the humidity is high, and we're like, man, that's where we want to be.
Yeah, this was great. We threw their system into our setup, and we have a warm, humid environment. It's great for growing all sorts of little buggers, and it's junk. And so I very intentionally cleaned nothing for 8 months, and it was wonderful just having the system running. It kept the colonies alive, healthy, and it stopped the infections. It was really wonderful. It's the same technology they use for cleaning the air on the ISS.
Okay.
Going back to your cost question, I will say that right now the biggest cost isn't actually our system or our invention. It's actually the growth chamber that the system has to live in. The system that keeps things sterile, that manipulates the environment. We're not inventing that. That's inventing the wheel. That has already been invented, and there are a lot of people who are working on making those growth chambers cheaper, more effective. So as the cost of those growth chambers comes down, the cost of our invention is also going to come down.
Yeah, unfortunately, those are mostly in the cell culture scientific space right now. Mm-hmm. We don't need something quite that intense, but for us to develop it seems unnecessary if we can buy something off the shelf.
Love it. Thank you three so much. We're going to have you stay on, and we're going to have some fun with a Shark Tank pitch. Maybe you guys could work together, with a company like this. So I'll put that on. So if you guys could go on mute for me, Matt, do the same. I'll share screen and we'll listen to a little Shark Tank pitch.
Pushed into the tank is a healthier version of a favorite snack.
Hello, My name is Michael Pan, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. My company is Pans, and I'm here today to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart. Jerky. Sharks, you're all busy and know what it's like to need fuel on the go. And jerky is a convenient, tasty, nutritious snack people have been enjoying for centuries. Let's take a moment to appreciate our jerky in all of its glory. I can't think of anything more satisfying than ripping into a meaty, chewy, delicious piece of jerky. Whew. Almost brings a tear to my eye. Pans is high in fiber and vitamin D. It's paleo, soy-free, gluten-free, and there are just 6 simple ingredients in our original recipe. And all our flavors have their own unique umami taste. Wow. I didn't mean to go on and on about our jerky without you being able to taste it. I'd love for you each to take a bite, so please, go ahead. Now, I can't wait to hear your thoughts, but before you share them, I have to admit something. That marvelously meaty texture that you're experiencing,
Great. Really good.
thank you,
Love it.
is actually mushrooms. That's right, Pan's mushroom jerky.
I was wondering.
I love it even more.
This is great.
We have 4 delicious flavors.
Oh my God.
Original, zesty Thai, salt and pepper, and
Wow.
applewood barbecue. All of them have a delicious flavor and satisfying texture that fans of jerky love. Now, Sharks, I'm seeking $300,000 in exchange for 10% equity. Who's ready to take another bite?
Wow, that was a great reveal.
Thank you. These are all shiitakes, by the way.
So tell us your story. How did you get into mushroom jerky?
So my father was born and raised in a small fishing village in Malaysia. Luckily, I had the opportunity to go visit family to learn about my heritage and where I came from. And one of these visits to Malaysia, there was a bowl of food on the table. I reached in and try it, and immediately I thought, oh, this is great. It must be pork. I was really confused. The person who served it was my cousin, and he was vegetarian Buddhist. And he had been making the snack for himself, for his family, for people in the area, and selling it locally. And as vegetarians, they had a really hard time finding foods that not only tasted great, but also had a really great texture. And mushrooms were very satisfying and also very healthy. A COVID disaster loan as well.
Would you say you're on track to do $1 million this year?
Yes, we think we're going to get 1.5.
1.5.
We're about $95,000 to $100,000 in sales a month right now.
I want to talk about something more exciting and fun.
How good it tastes.
Yes,
huh?
which is these.
Thank you.
Look at this. I have nothing left.
And seriously,
You're not the only one.
I'm in the bags here.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Thank you, Lori.
Totally my cup of tea. Is there anybody else doing this?
There are others starting to do this, and that's obviously why I'm here. We want to move faster. But we really rely on our taste and texture is superior to anyone else.
Michael, you making money yet?
You got a deal.
No, I'll do it
18
for
you got.
15. I'll do it for 15.
You just gave me an offer. You're going to live up to
I'll do it for 15.
Mark, you got a deal.
All right. Sharks were clamoring. So,
Yeah.
what's your
right.
initial take? Let's start with Matt. What your quick trademark and other overall take?
Yeah, no. So they have a trademark registration on Pans, right? Generally speaking, you can't register a service mark in particular if it's a surname. But in this particular case, because it's Pans apostrophe S, it's a product, able to get around that potential surname refusal to USPTO. They're registered to protect mushroom-based snacks. So,
Okay.
cool. Yeah.
Very quick update. So they came back. They did do a deal with Mark. I want to just point out, though, from the patent perspective, right, that question was asked, do you have any competition? And he kind of said, well, really, no, we're trying to be a first mover. That's dangerous, right? He's up there looking for investment, and good thing he got it. They're still in business. They're selling a ton. But that's one of the risks you take without getting a patent, without having any type of specific technology. Maybe they've got something behind the scenes kept as a trade secret in terms of how they're formulating that food, and it would be probably not worth it or too risky to try to go for patenting on it from that perspective. So I'll hand it over to the Mycology team. What do you guys think about this pitch and product?
No, it's great. I've had lots of mushroom jerky and it's delicious.
You have?
Sometimes it's delicious.
There is some very bad mushroom jerky that I've had as well.
You guys are familiar. I've never had it. Matt, have you had mushroom jerky?
No, never even
no.
considered it.
Like common for you guys. Okay.
It comes down to spices and texture. We will warn you. There's thousands of different types of mushrooms, and there's definitely some that are just slime. Like there's one that like it inks, like, and it just melts into a blob of goo. So some will be worth cultivating, and some just won't.
Okay, got it. Have you thought about that and one particular avenue, right? Serving makers of jerky. Would that be a good fit, or is that more for the farm high volume?
So you notice that he said they're shiitake mushrooms. So they're sticking to mushrooms that are easily cultivated. So you can do it on a massive volume. And so we are looking at a lot of these sort of gourmet species and ones that are hard to cultivate. So I don't know if the fit is perfect there for us, unless you were looking at doing small scale batches of particular species.
Got it. So I think maybe Matt, you were right with that brewery, right? That independent, small batch, boutique, high end, or just unique and local, maybe not necessarily high price, but I think maybe for me, it's not beer right away. It's just the raw, fruit of the mushroom. People aren't used to. You're not just always going to take that raw mushroom and eat it. There's got to be something readily convertible or that hot new thing. A way to consume mushrooms that is as close as possible to beer.
That is actually why we think that area that's in that line where you actually sell to restaurants is actually so interesting. Where you say, let's put it on the people that actually serve food to actually come up with how to prepare it. And then the advantage we think we have is you do get the ability to introduce mushrooms that people do not generally eat, simply because they're generally not available.
Yeah,
right.
I'm thinking mushroom
really
popcorn.
Cool. I love that. I love that aspect of it, Nicholas. That you could have a whole whole new portfolio of mushrooms to try.
So I do want to address the comment to you. There's one about mushroom leather manufacturers. We were lucky enough that when we started talking about this, we actually got we started talking to a number of people in Chicago. There happened to be a company that was using mushrooms not for the fruiting body, but they're actually making the colony that we would think about. They were growing that in a vat, and then you mulch that all up and you turn it into a protein powder. There's another company that uses a very similar concept to what we're proposing or what we have. And instead of growing the mushroom in order to, again, have a fruiting body, which is where we really think we stand out, they actually grow it and then take the hyphae, the colony, and like brush it in different directions after every growth cycle. And by doing that, you can actually make this leather equivalent. And it comes out and it's really tough and it's really like, it's really durable. And it's basically all of these cells growing into each other and making this fiber pad. But the technologies are related. The company that's making the mushroom powder, they're growing it in a very similar style as making beer, where you have this nutrient-rich media that they all brew up. In the case of the leather, they actually use a sheet and put the nutrient-rich media on top of the mushroom, and it actually just seeps through this sheet very, very slowly. So similar to what we're proposing, except in their case, they can't make a fruiting body because you don't have space. You don't have that form factor.
Wow.
Very cool. It's almost like they're growing on a lattice or some sort of structure. Interesting.
I will say, going back to the Shark Tank idea, if, for example, someone wanted to make mushroom jerky, but with a less easily cultivatable mushroom, let's say, they wanted something really big and meaty like chanterelles. They wanted to try to make it with that kind of mushroom. That would be a possible avenue for us, especially because our technology is potentially scalable. That could certainly work as well.
So in the scalability argument, again, as I said, it's a pumping. It becomes a plumbing issue. Think of it as your colony becomes something that looks sort of like a thermos bottle, and you have tubes that go in and out of it. Yep. And you grow this and you grow mushrooms and it's all. But there's no reason why you can't just stack 1,000 of them together and then all of them grow at the same time. So your mushroom farm actually becomes more like a mushroom closet with a door, and it just you grow, and that's how it works. So although the capex cost would be a little bit higher, the opex is relatively low. You essentially feed it sugary water.
Wow. Right. And you don't need any above ground element. This could all exist beneath the ground.
Yeah, like it's
mushrooms they don't need light
they don't need light.
like plants.
So all of a sudden, like mineral rights, or the land becomes more valuable. Yeah.
Mushrooms are terrifying. That's what I've learned from this conversation today.
Yeah.
I am intimidated, right?
So that entire concept of cordyceps, where they can take over your brain, and The Last of Us turns into something.
Yeah, I was going to reference The Last of Us. I was going to reference the penguin, but yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Oh, it was such a cool show. Again, we'll have to have you back on. If someone is listening, watching, would like to get a hold of you, Natalie, I'll maybe pin you. Are you able to share your email address? Would you be comfortable?
Yeah.
Questions? Okay, I'll share that here. And I've got this is n.r.dale@mumycology.com. And you've got your website. I didn't get to show that, but I did share that earlier. So that's your email address. Please reach out to Natalie and team if you have questions. Maybe you have some funding, some issues and questions about investing, being a part of what they're up to. Matt, any parting words here before we wrap up?
No, super cool. I love what you're doing. I think the system idea is incredible. And I think you're right at the leading edge of this whole new movement that's happening in mycology. So I think we can expect great things, and you're getting it on the ground floor, which is phenomenal for you.
Again, thank you so much. Bold Patents really helped us, and it was absolutely great working with you guys.
Wonderful. So good to have you. Edward, Natalie, Nicholas, take care. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you very much.
Go Bold.